Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Maddie Hornsby. I'm the project manager for the Riot organization, and welcome to the Riot Lunch and Learn series, the place where we spotlight Riot sponsors. Today, we have with us Gary Shaffer and Aaron Fowler from Cornerstone to talk about secure software supply chains and why they matter. Just a few quick reminders before we get started. This event is being recorded and will be posted to Riot's YouTube channel and uploaded to the meetup page where you registered for this event. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, just type them in the chat and then I'll let Gary or Aaron know, and they're gonna answer your question during the presentation as well. And then please keep yourself muted throughout the event. And that's it from me. So I will go ahead and throw it over to Gary and Aaron. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Maddie, and thank you for having us. As Maddie mentioned, my name is Gary Shaffer with Cornerstone Technical Solutions. I'm one of the co-founders of Cornerstone Technical Solutions here in the Raleigh area. We were actually one of the Riot cohorts as well for one of our products, now called TrueStacks, actually. So that's kind of how we got involved with these guys. I've got personally a Marine Corps veteran, about 17 plus years in technology, now 18 years, everything from DOD, FBI, some government agencies, and finally got tired of working in basements and no sunlight. Now we're in the more so in the commercial space, but we still do a lot of government contracting as well on that side of the house. And along with me, I've got Aaron Fowler. Aaron, if you want to.
Hey, hello everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm Aaron Fowler. I'm on the sales and business development side with Cornerstone Technical Solutions and handle a lot of our engagements and relationships and partnerships and things like that. So definitely enjoy doing these webinars. I think this is the second one we've been able to do for Riot, and we've enjoyed them so far. It's been a lot of fun. So hope you guys enjoy, and thanks for coming.
Thanks, Aaron. Yes, and also thank you for everyone who's joined. I know it's hard to get on everyone's calendar these days. I think everybody's got a little bit of Zoom burnout, or whatever you want to call it. But again, thank you guys for actually taking the time to be with us today. A little bit of housekeeping. One of the things I don't like is death by PowerPoint or by slides. Please interact if you have questions. We're a small enough group here. I think we can actually accommodate that. So if you do have questions, please raise your hand in the chat section, or just let Maddie or Aaron know, and we will definitely address those on that slide. Before we move on to the next one. Grab a coffee, sit back, relax, familiarize yourself with Zoom. There will be some polls, and I believe all of those polls are going to be kind of entered in at once, but Aaron will go ahead and put in the chat, please answer poll number 1 or something like that as we move forward. If you can, turn on your cameras if appropriate. I'd like to put names to faces where possible. And, again, we can ask to unmute where it seems appropriate. So kind of what we do as a company, just a little bit, we've got a lot of experience in this secure DevOps space, if you will, really from, we're traditionally an IT consulting company. So a lot of IT services, and slowly moved into, a lot of the lessons learned from our services are now getting a little more productized. But in general, we do a lot with automation, DevOps, CI/CD, a lot of cloud native development, hybrid multi-cloud strategies, those types of things. So, if there's not a product that does it, we can obviously be the systems integrator to actually make all of this happen. Certified by the MVVDC as a veteran-owned business. We've been in business since 2012. So a little while now. All right, so the flow of this presentation, why secure DevOps, right? Why does it even matter in the first place? And if you were able to join us in the last Riot webinar, we went over this in more depth, your secure DevOps strategy. We're just going to go over just what is it, and then how the secure software supply chains or the secure software factories actually matter, and how it actually helps that DevSecOps initiative and kind of help you along your journey. All right, so secure DevOps and why you need it. Traditionally, if you are a startup, or if you have a product, if you're a startup within a larger organization, you may be familiar with this concept of, developers and operations trying to actually work together. That's kind of where DevOps came from, right? Kind of very, that term's been around forever. This DevSecOps term, if you will, is really where, we try to put security at the forefront of both teams, right? From the dev, the ops side of it. And it's really a model where everyone's responsible for security, at their level. If you are a startup, you may not have experienced this yet. As you grow, once you actually have to have a security team, or maybe, a CISSP or something like that, that's actually going to talk to you about compliance and security and those types of things. If it was hard enough for dev and ops to actually get along, developers and operations guys, add security into that mix, and it can get pretty interesting, especially with the larger organizations that are now trying to break down some of those communication silos. But at the end of the day, security is, probably the most important task, right, of both the developer and the operations team. So we need to learn how to work better together, and kind of getting everyone working towards that same goal. So, if we define DevSecOps, kind of at its whole, its mantra is to make everyone accountable for security with the objective of implementing security decisions and actions at scale. So, once we understand what security policies or compliance measures or, whatever that is, at different points in the process, now how do we actually implement that into the process, whether that's a tool, whether that's part of the CI/CD pipelines as you're developing, how do we make everyone accountable for it, but also see how we can automate it as well. So it's not something the developer constantly has to think about, or the operations team constantly has to think about. So if we can automate this into our existing processes, it just makes life a lot easier the further you shift security left within that development process. So with DevSecOps in general, or Secure DevOps, there are some challenges, with this. It's not just the security aspect of it, but the need for an expert in one thing, in one technology, the way things used to be, that's really no longer a thing anymore. I mean, we need people that are more so on the generalist side, than anything, but with that comes some rising talent costs, right? So things, like a site reliability engineer, if you're not familiar with that, it's generally somebody that understands and can do software development, but they also understand how to actually get the application up into that cloud infrastructure or what have you. And actually making sure that those systems actually talk to each other and they're always up and running. And the rising talent costs in general can be an issue because they're not just an expert in one thing, but they can go usually 4 or 5 layers deep in a lot of different things. So there's that. And then also understanding the security implications. Let me move the polls. Pop up. But you need somebody that can understand how security gets implemented at those different stages. So again, rising talent costs. You need more coverage, whether that's a global thing, right? Your customers are all around the world, potentially different time zones. Your team is now remote as well, especially now with COVID. So we need more coverage overall, right? Whether that's actual, again, geographic or just skill set. And then you kind of have to make the decision, well, do I automate this process or do I hire this, right? And just one example of that is if you've ever heard of Beachbody, the fitness industry, they actually run a pretty large information technology stack over there, but they literally do it with a team of about, I think the rumor I had heard was about 4 engineers for the entire Beachbody SaaS platform. And they did all of that through automation. So I don't know, is that $1 billion company, Aaron, if you want to look that up, actually, they're a rather large company, really large software as a service platform, but they were actually able to automate everything. Now that doesn't come cheap, that doesn't come easy. I'm sure they had to increment their way to get there. But again, that's what we were told. And one of the companies they used to do that with was Dynatrace. It was actually one of their case studies. So very interesting. So it's so do I automate this process now, or do I need to actually hire? So these are just some of the challenges that come with Secure DevOps overall. So how can a factory help me? if you're on this call, you are probably doing one, if not more of these things, most likely more of these things. There's usually, whether it's a startup or an existing organization, people are trying to, either do, cloud native DevOps, multi-cloud deployments, microservices architecture with containerized application, those types of things. DevSecOps availability, that's multiple pipelines, multiple CI/CD platforms across different environments, those types of things. Service mesh, again, if your application requires that. And then it's not just getting these applications built, deployed, and released, but now it's also, you have the operate stage. So you have your day 2 operations. How do I automate some of my day 2 operations as well? And, have some reactive automation or even some proactive automation. How can I get there? So everyone's kind of familiar with these initiatives actually happening in the industry right now. And, if you really think about it, every organization at some level, and this is nowhere near comprehensive, this is just what I could fit on one slide, but, everyone is dealing with these types of solutions, right? Whether it's, okay, well, if I'm writing or building an application, I need static code analysis. I may need container security. I need code security. I might need bill of materials. I need a pipeline to actually push my software through, and each step in that pipeline needs to do something, right? To either make me more secure or do my load testing or whatever that is. Every software company needs version control, right? Do I use GitHub? Do I use GitLab? Do I bring it on-prem or off-prem? Is it a hybrid approach? All of those things. Single sign-on, multi-factor auth, all of these things, someone's thinking about, right? And, maybe you need all of these things, maybe you only need a subset. And that's really where, we try to help people understand, what's going to work for me right now for my organization where I'm at today, right? If you're a small startup, you may only need a few of these things. If you're a much larger organization, there could be 20 more, right? That need to happen. But really where the rubber meets the road, and I think one of the hardest things is, for organizations to adopt secure DevOps overall, is that all of these things have to at some point integrate together. And this is where the rubber meets the road, and it's really hard to get things right. And, again, how do we do that, right? Because with this comes technical debt. There comes a lot of time just to get all of these different tools and different solutions and compliance measures all in place. And, how do we accelerate DevSecOps overall? So to overcome this complexity, again, how do we accelerate DevSecOps? One of the biggest things we want to try to do is reduce technical debt and reduce time to value. So we don't want this 6 month to a year ramp up time to actually get, okay, now, I have my factory in place. I have my tools that I want. They're all integrated together. Now I can finally start developing code, and really at the core of your organization, what matters most is your application that's supporting your end customer. That's the thing that's actually driving your business. But you also need these other things to happen. And it's hard to do that if you're an existing organization, because you have to also, not only do I now have to maintain my existing applications and my existing process, but now I have to go build something new to actually support this secure DevOps initiative and, potentially create my own secure software factory or whatever that is. A few of the other things that we try to cover with the DevSecOps side of the house is, how do I streamline my processes, enforce best business practices, and innovate at the same time. So again, how do I manage all of these things? So I think one of the biggest things that we need to do as an organization is cast your vision. And this is one of my favorite quotes. I use it almost in every single PowerPoint or every slide deck that I use when I talk to customers, but it's by Red Hat architect John Wadley, said at Red Hat Summit 2 years ago, let's get your team sailing all in the same boat, sailing in the same direction. And that's really true, because without a vision, especially from the management level, mid-management, especially senior management, okay, hey, this is our initiative. This is what we want to accomplish. And let's actually communicate that all the way down. Let's actually define, okay, what do we want our security posture to be? What do we want our tool set to look like? What do we, which technologies are we going to sell to standardize on? What's our process going to be for onboarding new applications or onboarding new teams of developers or Scrum teams or whatever? Let's get that defined first. And then, okay, now we can actually build a factory that can support you. And, so that even goes into detail as far as what languages are we going to write in? What's our front end going to look like? What's our back end going to look like? What's our database solution? All of that. Once that's defined, now we can start looking at, okay, let's take a look at a secure software factory option. So the idea of a secure software factory kind of came about probably two years ago and some change. And I kind of argue it came from either Red Hat or DLT. I'm not sure who mentioned it first, but DLT Solutions is a big government partner of ours, just recently bought out by Tech Data. And, they came up with this idea of a trusted secure software supply chain is what they called it initially, the TSSC. And I'm sorry, they call it the SSF, the Secure Software Factory. And the idea was to, we have all of these steps in the development process that you see here, right? Plan, develop, test, release, deploy. And their goal in life as a distribution company at the time was to bring the right vendor to the product. And this was really big in the federal space. These were a large federal government client. And, the government's at least 10 years behind in some instances, depending on where you go. But, their idea was, okay, we need to modernize now. Let's throw a bunch of money at it and bring the right partner to the right step in the process. And this is a great concept. It was a great framework to work around. But every time we did a webinar with them or spoke to a potential client, they said, cool, how do I buy this thing? And it was like, well, you still have to go procure all of these technologies and pay someone to integrate it or go integrate it yourself. So there was still this ramp up time, right? This technical debt that we kind of covered before. So we kind of looked at this and said, how do we accelerate this a little bit? Right. So we know this is good, right? This is a good idea and it matters. And we're going to talk about that again on the next slide. But then how do we take a snapshot of this and actually kind of get you to day zero just a little bit faster? So this is kind of where the idea of an automated secure software factory started to come about between Red Hat, DLT, and then we started kind of getting involved as well. So secure software supply chains, they're deployed as software factories, right? So we call it a factory, and they contain all of the necessary tools, from version control, testing, security, regulatory compliance, validation. And again, this goes back to 2 slides ago when we said cast your vision, define what that means to you, right? Define what it is you actually need inside of that factory. And then that determines which technologies you choose. A lot of companies and organizations that we've talked to will try to do this in reverse. Well, we have to have SonarQube, where we have to have Anchor as our security scanning tool for the containers. We have to use this version of Kubernetes or that. So focused on the technology instead of the outcome. What is the end result that you're looking for? And then we'll pick which tools work best for your organization, because that can come down to cost, or maybe it's too many features, you're only going to use 20% of it, that type of thing. But the biggest thing is communicating, where is it we want to be? What's the end goal at the end of the day? But we need something that can cover security, compliance, privacy, right? Whether that's HIPAA, PCI, DoD level type security, that type of thing. And then transparency, what's getting automated, what's running where, when, all of that. So think of the factory as the thing that, again, has all of the tools needed to produce the outcome you're looking for. So that's the initial tool part. Now, again, that all still has to be integrated like we showed before, right? So just keep that in mind. The next step in a secure software supply chain is, again, determining what steps now need to happen in my pipeline, right? So okay, now I have these tools, that's great. How am I actually going to consume that capability? So now there's a little bit of integration with your pipeline utilities, whether that's Azure DevOps, GitLab CI, Tecton, there's other ones out there. But again, how am I actually going to consume these tools to actually be used in my process? We could save this one for another webinar, but there's an open source project out there currently called Playgos. And this is a Red Hat kind of open source framework, if you will, that's starting to come about within the community right now. And we're kind of heavily involved with this now as well with our TrueStacks product. But essentially it's a framework to where we're trying to automate as much of the developer process. So the things that the developers used to have to think about, we're trying to automate it more so, right? So that way, literally, when we say things like just bring your code, We would literally mean that at the end of the day, we would love to get a platform or a factory that works for an organization to where their development teams can just bring their code. That should be the only thing they have to worry about. They should be able to tell the system, okay, I'm developing the front end in React. I have this, Django application or something like that, right? Or I'm using these databases, and we can build a factory that can support that. And we can also build the pipeline steps that can actually consume all of those tools from the factory. And then again, produce the correct outcome before your application ever even gets deployed. So again, this is kind of where, where secure software factories are very, very beneficial. And this is where we came up with one of our solutions. It was initially called Zero. If any of you have ever seen us on LinkedIn, we used to pitch a lot of Zero. Right now, it's actually called TrueStacks. And what we did was we took a snapshot of what a secure software factory could be. We picked a select few technologies that can go into the factory to produce basically a standard outcome. So things like, static code analysis, load testing, unit testing, linting, a lot of the steps in the process, we have covered kind of out of the box. So there's certain frameworks that we can deploy right now for customers where we can get you to day zero in about 20 minutes. So the entire factory is fully integrated with each other. So everything has single sign-on, everything, the consoles, if there's a console in the factory for SonarQube or GitLab or what have you, everything has multi-factor authentication in there. They're all aware of each other. So everything's kind of fully integrated in the factory. And then there's a day one type operation that's mostly automated. We're currently building out a lot of the frameworks for Python applications, Django applications, and React and Java at the moment. Those are the main 3 or 4 that we have automated into a day one right now, where, okay, I'm building a React application. Here's a pipeline specifically for React, or here's a pipeline specifically for just straight Python. And you're able to do that out of the box, literally day zero instead. So instead of spending a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months building your own factory and then creating the pipelines to actually consume it, we're starting to automate a lot of that level of integration. So this is just one example of a potential solution, right? Is the TrueStack solution. There's also some other ones out there as well that are some SaaS products. We have a mantra out there, we prefer orchestration over abstraction. So we don't like to hide the tools from you. You can log into them, configure them, modify them, customize them, that type of thing. So again, this is just a framework that we can help you work around. And again, back to the steps, the steps involved in developing. These are the main ones that we currently cover, right, with our framework, but this is going to grow significantly over the next 6 to 12 months. And, again, you can either go this alone or find a solution like TrueStacks or something else that's out there on the market. There's a couple other companies that have also come up as well, which we can share with you if you're interested. But again, these are 23 steps, I think, right now. Currently, we cover within the development process to actually help you build better quality software a little faster. And actually, I think that is it. I'm sorry, I was a little quick, but is there any questions currently? Maddie, Aaron?
Yeah, I don't see any questions in the chat, Gary, but thanks so much for your really great presentation.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, that was very much appreciated, Gary. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Awesome. And we have all your contact information down there at the bottom, so everyone knows how to get in touch with Gary.
Yep. I do bring this stuff up a lot with clients. Haven't had a whole lot of traction just yet, but I was pretty new to, like, before I met with Gary and Aaron a few months ago, I had no idea how to talk to developers. So the conversations are improving, but it's a work in progress.
No, and that's fair. And one thing I meant to bring up actually was right now it's a big market education phase right now. The only companies that were really talking about this initially, even up to 6 months ago, was your extremely large enterprises or DoD, especially in DoD right now. This is a hot topic. If you ever heard of a platform called Platform One, it was something that was started by the Air Force about 2 years ago, but it was something that was really unattainable for mid-market and small business and even startups, because it's overly expensive to do this yourself.
Sure.
So that's where, again, market education around factories, around proper CI/CD, that type of thing, it's slowly becoming available to mid-market small business. But again, kind of to do it on your own could take you 6 months to a year, and that's
so here's a question then. I've brought up the phrase secure software factory a number of times and been met with kind of like I'm on a phone, but I imagine it's probably like a deer in headlight type of look on the other end. Is there any other kind of catchphrase that might get them to understand what I'm offering more quickly?
Right now, that is the term.
Okay.
I would say so. Yeah. So one of the things we're doing with TrueStacks, because we've run into the same thing. What the heck is a factory? We have mentioned Secure DevOps orchestration platform before. So I think we're making with a DevSecOps orchestration platform.
Okay.
It's a tagline even for TrueStacks. Just because, to your point, secure software factory sounds interesting. It's not as common yet. One of the large customers that Red Hat's currently dealing with, they're an FSI customer. Just as an example of how difficult this could be to DIY, they're an FSI customer. They have a team on this particular team, it's 40 developers. They built their own secure software factory, so they containerized all the tools they needed, and they had like 30 steps in their development, in their pipeline. Like, it was a lot, right? But they're a big FSI customer. There's a lot of personal information and different compliance things that they have to account for. So I understand it's a little more complex. But even with a team of 40 developers, and I think like 10 of them were dedicated to just this, it took them over a year to build the platform.
Wow.
And they used it for 2 years. Now they're about to go pay somebody over $1 million in consulting services to help them build this version 2 for another year. It take them a year to build it out, and then they're going to use that for 2 years and do it again. Now, as a startup or SMB or mid-market, of course, that scales a lot smaller. But even still, having something to start with, right, to get you to day zero quicker. Okay, let's get you with a platform, let's say 50% of the way there, 60% of the way there, right? We can save you, according, like, even with that customer, you probably could have saved them half of that.
Sure.
So let's focus on the last 20% that's different from organization to organization. But if I go back to this, generally every company has very similar needs, right? I would say every company's development process might differ by 20% at the end of the day. If you're only focused on outcomes, at the end of the day, I would say let's focus on the 20% that matters to you. But let's at least get this 80% fully automated and out of the way. We don't need this right now. So one of the things we're doing with TrueStacks is we're coming up with a build your stack mentality. So, okay, what are you developing in? What's your database? Like, actually ask those questions and then automate even the project creation of that. It's got some ways to go, but that's something we're working on with Red Hat right now too.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this stuff sounds awesome. And, I really enjoy bringing this up with clients, at least attempting to have the conversations. And, as time goes by, I'll hone my skills here. And I'm sure I'll find some opportunities for us in the not too distant future.
Oh, that's fair. No problem.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, appreciate it. Well, and to your point too, it's like, I think that's why I like Secure Software Factory, because it is kind of a deer in the headlights, but I think it kind of builds that curiosity too, where it's obviously like anything else. I mean, before Kubernetes was Kubernetes, and I mean, no one knew, right? Like, it's just It's just one of those things where it is not even just with what we're doing, but in general of really DevSecOps. Really, it's so much market education. And the more that we're talking to people, and the more we're having these webinars and a lot of this discovery, if you wish, like, we do realize there is such market education, and it's definitely more conversational, and it's more of a journey. It's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. So you definitely have to take it slow, and going back to the why they matter, right? Like, why are we doing this in the first place? It's really saving a lot of time. I mean, it's really at the end of the day, it's driving more efficiency and really bringing value to developers and ultimately their customers.
So yeah, there's one thing I was wondering are you familiar with a company called Go Anywhere? They have a managed file transfer.
I don't think.
I think it works with like Databricks and Snowflake.
Yeah, now that you mentioned that part of it, it sounds a little familiar.
So I'm just wondering, is that something that might be used in tandem with what you guys do, or is that a competitor?
So it's yeah, we can talk about this offline, I think, but I think it's something that could potentially be integrated. Because one of the things we have talked about in a future roadmap item, kind of more down the road. Because I think right now getting automatic project creation is something developers could use now. But things like database migrations, database upgrades, file movements within my pipeline, right? So if I do have to do a migration of something in my application, how do I handle that in the pipeline? And that is something we have talked about is, dealing with storage, right? Within that whole development process.
Okay, interesting. Well, everyone, I do have to get going here. I've got another one that I'm probably going to be a little late to, but thank you,
Thanks, Matt.
everyone. Really
Thanks for
appreciate
joining.
your time today. And yeah, this is all very informative. So really appreciate your time and looking forward to finding some new stuff for us.
Thanks so much, Matt.
Yep. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Jim, would you like to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes, thanks. Gary and Aaron, are you doing anything around the people side of adoption of this? So you've covered the technical side really well, but my specialty is in organizational culture change around Agile. And it's one thing to sell the company on this. It's another thing to then sell the people inside the company on this and provide them with the communications and the training, overcoming their resistance to making the change. So are you doing any thinking along those lines?
Yeah. So one of the things we have been talking about, especially heading into 2022, is, and we've been having these conversations with Red Hat as well, because we'll go into Red Hat projects even just for automation, right? And back to that one slide that says, cast your vision, get everybody sailing in the same direction. A lot of times we'll get there and the engineers had no idea where we're coming. They didn't know they were going to be using Ansible. They didn't know we were going to be doing an automation project. So one of the things I'm pitching to them right now is, I don't even want an engineer in the room. We want to hold workshops for VP, maybe down to like the IT operations manager or something like that. And maybe their enterprise architect in there at a high level, nobody below management. And we actually want to hold an 8-hour working session with maybe 6 people at a time and actually do workshops. Like, hey, here's how you build a good team, right? And this is how you build this strategy into your environment. So we tossed around a couple ideas. We have a couple draft slide decks I can show you and really whiteboard it out. And the nice thing about having a small group, maybe 6 to 8 people, maybe we could do 10, 12 if I can get some more people in the room to help float. But, having them understand what they want to do and then understanding what their current processes look like and then telling them, well, this is why it won't work. Because a lot of times everything's so siloed, you can't even have an automation strategy. It's almost impossible. Like we've dealt with some Wall Street customers recently with Red Hat, where they're extremely siloed and they have these different business units and organizations, and each one from a legal standpoint has their own rules of what can be automated and what. Well, this should have been discussed a year ago before we ever even implemented the technology. So let's talk strategy before we actually implement the technology. So we at least wanted to get about a full working day's workshop, like, provide lunch, let's bring in some decision makers and all of that and have the initial conversation. And if that turns into more of, yeah, we need you to actually consult with us and actually help us deeper, then we can turn that into an engagement if we have to, or work with somebody like you. I don't know. I'm not sure what your role is, but that is something we need to focus on, is the actual, let's get the strategy defined first and then worry about technology. Everybody's so focused on buying the tool and it's not the answer. Buying a bunch of tools is not it. It's let's actually get everybody going in the same direction first and get buying.
Yeah, I've only been dealing with that issue for about 25 years. So good luck.
I know it's tough. But I mean, if we can at least have the conversation and get them get them realizing, hey, your current processes won't work for what you're trying to do.
Yeah, I would.
Let's see what they say.
I would respectfully suggest that you do want 1 or 2 engineers in those initial conversations. These people can become what is referred to in the organizational change world as change agents, people who will help you promote the change to their peers. So involving them in those early decisions, I think will build your credibility and build your ability to persuade further down the road.
Yeah, I think Red Hat calls them champions or something like that. It's that would be good. Again, I would probably even go down to like, again, the whole team lead level, because it's not going to be a very technology specific thing, but it does need to be directional. But to your point though, it does technically affect the engineer too. So yeah, having their input would be great, with their manager in the room.
All right, good. Yeah, I like to hear you thinking about that. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, no problem.
Great question, Jim. Thanks so much for your input. Cool. Well, that's all the hand raising that I see, and no questions in the chat, Gary or Aaron. Thank you guys again so much for your time.
Thank you all.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, I hope everyone has a great rest of their Wednesday.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, y'all.
Take care.